Okay, hi, my name is Eileen, a sophomore at Brooklyn Tech.
And I'm Sinan, a sophomore at Bronx
Please
Science.
don't drag us. We are the Mighty Mechanics, a community-based FTC team in Forest Hills, New York. And we're 13 team members from all around New York, ages ranging from 14 to 18 and from 11 different schools. We've been a team for 7 years and have experience in practicing and analyzing the robot game over the years.
Um, yeah, this is our team. And so our whole thing is on analyzing the robot game. And so I think one of the first things as like a competitive team that you should probably do is creating like a priority list of what you want to get accomplished this season, right? So before you like make this priority list, like what do you need? You need to read the game manual first, obviously, before you start doing it, so that what are the like strategies that you can employ. What are the obstacles that you're going to need to look for? What are the things that are going to get you the max amount of points? And that's all from like reading the game manual first. And from that, you create a priority list. You create, you might know what you want on your robot to look like, but priority list narrows that down so that you can focus on it. So, three main things that we have on our priority list as a team are the must-haves, the nice-to-haves, and the explore. So first, we have the must-haves. This is basically the bare bones of your robot. This is going to be what you, like as a team, need to accomplish like general movement around. And in FTC, there's many different types of challenges that come with, designing your chassis and designing like a specific requirements that can also be like wheels to get around and the size of your chassis. And so these are things that you should have in your must-haves and are necessary for the success of the team, right? Next, another idea would be to have a nice-to-haves list. These are enhancements to your robot that are going to probably like take you to the next scoring. All these things. These are like all of the things that you want to accomplish during it, and these are going to be what make your robot like get all of these like points, right? And then finally in our explore, that would be your end goal, right? This is what you want to do as like your final type of iteration, and these are going to be like really like new ideas, really innovative ideas that you guys wanted to implement, but you might have not had a time to do so in your qualifiers. And so that could also be just like computer vision or like PID loops or any type of new technique that you guys wanted to explore, but you may not have had the resources or time to do so in the beginning.
Yeah, and then so leading on, next thing is opportunity cost. So what is the opportunity cost? Well, in economics, this means a loss or benefit by partaking in an activity. And we can apply this to robotics as it's quite similar. So we want to ask ourselves, is a potential benefit slash loss worth the effort put in? So your potential points should outweigh any potential losses. So basically, in shorter terms, it means to compare opportunity costs with each other. So even though you might have positive gain with one potential, you want to ask yourself, is it really better compared to another potential? So this leads us to our next point, which is analyzing the field.
Yeah. So obviously, like the base thing that you're going to want to work on is like your field analysis, and this is going to dictate what you're going to do for the rest of the game. As field analysis has to be the first thing before any other analyses. After all, the entire robot's career is going to be on the field, right? And therefore, what are like some examples of this, right? We have 2 years ago, there was was it 2 years ago? Maybe 3 years ago was the Rover Ruckus, right? And if we look at that example, right, there was a 50-point climb in the end game that you guys could do. And that's in the middle, if you guys can see right there. There is, a place that a robot can climb. And this is similar to like, if anyone here is an FRC, they have a similar climbing thing. So it's like lifting up the robot itself. And this made it viable to focus on for earlier tournaments, since the payoff of the climb would be greater than the 5 points that you would get from scoring your game element in the scoring area in Telia, right? And so that is something that you might want to like have to look into as a part of your like lists, right? Something that you want to add on is that we need to do our cost benefit analysis and say that if we are going for this 50-point climb in endgame, then we need to focus on that rather than focusing on the teleop scoring in that area, right? So you'd have to consider if it was worth building if it was worth building an attachment like that.
So once you analyze the field,
I'm not done yet.
Oh, sorry.
So that was like one example of how like parts wise, but like another part of field analysis also comes in with like if we look at an example of Skystone, you can't really see it from here, but basically there are 3 separate things that you could have gone under, and if you Skystone had bridges that limited the robot's heights, but could give extra points by bringing the game pieces underneath them. And so this comes off with the idea of trade-off again, that if you build a shorter robot, you'd be trading off, one, you have to give up the extra space that you can use to be like placing more of your robot, and like honestly, space is really important. But also you have to see, are we going to gain more points per time that we bring these bricks onto your scoring area, right? And so you have to consider, do we want a shorter robot? And so those are some examples of like what you can do for objectives wise, right? But you also have to see, how can we design our robot for the interactions of our field? And that doesn't just mean like the scoring elements and objectives that we need to build onto the robot, but it's also including that, Skystone, or this is also talking about like how the robot is going to interact with like other teams, right? So if we look at Skystone again, right, as an example, we see that Alliance had quarries on opposite sides of the field. This quarries being where the game elements are stored, and this means that robots would frequently have to interact while trying to collect these quarries, right? And that can obviously cause some troubles, right? So what you might want to like take into account is the physical contact of your intake design, right? So it might mean that your intake design might have different like priorities in terms of like your size or shape, just so that you wouldn't be interacting with these other robots. You might want to make it shorter or less protruding, that it can like harm going up against other robots. Even if we look at Robo Ruckus again as our other example, we see that like Robo Ruckus had these craters with scoring elements very close to like by the lander, right? So the scoring elements are really close to the lander. However, so that would be a very like strategic position. But then there's also sides of that which were not near the scoring elements, and so you have to see, how is your robot going to interact with this field? Do you want it to be, obviously, you probably want it a more power position to be more near the scoring element, so it's just like an easy drop off. And because you'd have to travel less time to reach the crater, right? And that is how you analyze the field.
So that leads us, once you analyze the field, you definitely have to analyze the game elements. So how do we do that? So some years have a very diverse game elements, which might require separate manipulators. For example, Relic Recovery had glyphs and relics right over there. And since they're basically like very different in size and shape, most teams had separate ways to score them. But while it's better to have both mechanisms, you'd have to decide which game element you want to focus on first. And many people did the relics right there. And then in contrast, Skystone only had one element, and teams were allowed to make a custom team scoring stone over there. They decided to 3D print a similar stone that could fit into their intake and scoring mechanism to score the most, which leads us to our next point, robot design.
So going to robot design, this is very important because it's your little robot. Like, what parts you're going to be adding onto it that makes you an efficient team and makes all your like scoring go high. How you become a high scoring team and a competitive team. So one of the most important things, which is like really key to winning, if we look at all of these high scoring teams like Gluten Free or even us, the Mighty Mechanics, who have gotten many awards, we see that a common theme is the speed and consistency are key to winning matches. All right. This is why like every FTC team has 4 motors on their drive chain, which allows for more power and faster acceleration, because speed is probably one of the most important things during these FTC rounds that a lot of teams don't really understand. And so even if you have like a stellar robot, but if it doesn't like work 100% of the time, it's going to be subpar compared to other ones, right? So that is why speed is probably like one of the most important aspects when it comes to robot design. Another thing that a lot of teams need or should implement is this idea of touch it, own it, right? So this is when you use mechanisms that can give you control as soon as your robot contacts the game piece. So for example, last year during Ultimate Goal, we decided on a roller intake system. So as soon as the robot made contact with the disc, it would roll under and automatically be filtered into this system, like the indexing system, which is our hopper, right? This is often, most of these features use compliant wheels or any compliant feature. And if we look at gluten-free, for example, they use compliant wheels to intake their sky stones, right? And so although it causes like less accuracy, that is required to control a game piece. And it also decreases the time needed to intake these game pieces. So as like alternatively, most teams would be using a type of specific grabbing thing, or it would take time to position your robot in a certain way to obtain these pieces. This idea of you touch it, you own it, is going to put less stress on your drivers as well, as they don't need to like perfectly line it up. And it's going to, obviously it's going to speed up this process, which is really important during like the 2:30 in all, so the 2 minutes that you have teleop, including endgame.
And then, so another example is support shafts on both sides and using bearings for smooth radical motion.
Radial.
And then by doing this, it reduces the number of turns you have to take, which saves us time to maximize your robot's performance, because obviously time is a huge factor and turning a lot takes a lot of that time. And then, so now by doing this, it reduces, now because, for example, in Skystone, most robots intake stones from the front and delivered it from the back, since the quarry and the scoring foundation were on opposite sides of the field, as you can see there. However, in Ultimate Goal, the ring feeder and scoring tower are both on the same side of the field. So as you can see, ours, we had an intake from both sides, which saved us a lot of more time and less turns, which is definitely maximize our robot's performance a lot more, having the double intake. And to maximize a robot performance, we can reduce the number of turns by collecting rings from the front and back and shooting them. So that's something that we did. And so intake mechanisms and like where it's placed are definitely huge factors of how you can save time and turns. And so thank you for listening to our presentation. We hope that this was beneficial to your team. And good luck to all teams. And have a nice day, everyone.
Yeah, and you guys can follow the Mighty Mechanics or contact us because we can offer you guys help, and also follow us on Instagram.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So what do you guys think is the most important thing to analyze when a game comes out?
Most important? Well, I think one of the main things that we focused on this year was our chassis design, because, if you know the game this year, there was there's something you have to go over, like an obstacle you have to go over on the field. And so you have to see, do we want to use different wheels that would make it easier to go over this? Or do we want to make a slimmer robot that can go through the cracks, if that makes sense? And I think that's probably one of like the biggest things that a lot of teams are going to like that's going to make a big difference. And so it's really like, going back to our priority list, like that was number one. What we needed to figure out was like what type of design that we were going to use for our chassis, and like what wheels we were going to use, like the bare bones for a robot. So like how it interacts with the field.
Yeah, definitely, because like motion is a huge factor, like which path you're gonna take before any intake or anything, or just basic driving. And then so because you're gonna drive over a barrier, if you get caught or stuck on it, then that would be you basically the rest of the match is over. So that was definitely first on our priority list. So we're thinking a small robot to avoid the barrier, or better wheels to go over it. So that was one of the first things that we thought of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then how do you guys decide what actually you're going to do to score think in endgame you can score rubber duckies for this challenge, and then also if the shared alliance piece is on your side, you can. I think that's 20 points. So like, how do you decide which one you're gonna go for?
I think definitely things like which one's worth it, worth the amount of points, because some of them are really hard but risky, and especially depending on your robot's mechanism, it might not be very accurate, and also the placement. For example, if scoring the rubber duckies are like on the other side, and then you're all the way there, so you want to see like which one's closest, because time is very limited in like end game 30 seconds. So obviously time, and then the placement, like where you are on the field.
Yeah, also like going on back to like the idea of like being the fastest team on the field. I think, you know, if you build like the simple mechanism to like turn the carousel wheel. Actually, is that the one that you're talking about?
Yeah.
That mission? Yeah. You know, you'd have to say like, are we going to use a fast enough like motor that is going to, you know, help us out in the long run, or are we going to like use once again like an exact mechanism to pick up the game element, which is, you know, a possibility, you know, if the game element is on the field. That also comes into this idea of like how you're going to CAD things, but I think that's kind of like a nice to have priority. Like that's something that you should focus on later. You know, the main thing when you want to do in analyzing this game is, you know, obviously work on your speed and efficiency and how your robot's going to move around.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Any more question? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Yeah.